Sir, can I convince you to live in a tiny little box in my basement pretty much forever? No? Too bad. Hello everybody, I'm Arden. Welcome to another episode of Minecraft Enigmatica 2 Expert. And why did I just have to go trap an audiophile villager and toss him into this villager trader behind me? Well, that's so we can continue on with the bragging rights section and get some of the subcomponents we need for the later creative items that we need to make. In this case, I'm using him to trade specifically for music discs. Now, in theory, we could just create a music disc using a blank record and some essences, and then combine that with a few other things to turn it into a music disc. But by now, you all know my motto of, let's just kidnap a villager, eh? So he's shoved in there, he's slowly producing records. And he's doing it because it's one of the components we need to make the Infinity Catalyst. And honestly, probably one of the more confusing ones here to begin with. But there's a couple other things we do need to make this work. We need an Endless Pearl, which we haven't made yet, which is an ultimate crafting table recipe with a whole bunch of stuff that we currently don't have recipes for. And there's one thing in here that's a hitch that I need to address, and we're going to have to fix anyways. And that's that the ender casing takes empowered diamant time. And if we move over a little bit, you can see that my empower setup here only has 3 empowers, and one of those is for hardened cases. So I don't have all of the empowered crystals in here, and we're going to need them all before I'm done with this. So I guess that's the next step, is stack this up and get the last couple of empowered crystals made. Alright, so it was a lot of scut work that I hated doing, but now we have the Tower of Empowers set up here to handle each of the empowered crystals. And we should probably talk about what we need this for now. Because while I said I wanted to make the Infinity Catalyst, what we actually needed this for was the terrestrial artifact right here, because this requires all of the different empowered crystals. So I've got all of this set up and automated now. We also now have records that we did earlier, so that leaves us with the Endless Pearl and maybe a couple of these other blocks. I don't think I have the block of evil infused iron yet, but this is actually pretty straightforward because this is just running iron through the enchanter with nether stars. Maybe I actually do have this set up, I'm not sure. But I think I have the rest of this set up. So let's take a look at the Endless Pearl, which is pretty straightforward now that we have the empower setup, because we needed the diamantine for the ender casing. So that's taken care of. The Ender Star, this is a fairly easy craft, although it requires Dragon's Breath, but I should have enough for what we're doing here. If not, I can go kill more Ender Dragons, I suppose, although I'm not a huge fan of that. Oh, and apparently I forgot to tell to take out the empowered crystal there. And then these unstable Ender Pearls, which is just with Wither Dust, which we have a ton of. And then Solid Ender Eyes, which is just a bunch of eyes of Ender around a block of iron. So most of that should be fairly simple, assuming I have space in my molecular assembler lab, which I may not. I might have to go add some more capacity because I'm just about out. Right as we're finishing up the pack, go figure. Alright, and now that we have some of the scut work done, I set up another ultimate table, and now we have the Endless Pearl formula done. So we just have this here. We go in here into the automation interface, hit save. We go into the config, we want it to extract out to the south because that's the direction this box over here is. And I think we're good to go. If we come into my terminal, we should be able to craft, let's do 2 of them just to check. And of course not. Alright, so I swapped out the recipe that was in this packager. It now only does the Endless Pearl. I originally had it in one that included a couple other things. I think it's because it was a subcomponent in one of the other ones, I'm not sure, but now it appears to actually work right. So let's try this out and find out that we're missing endstone, which we should not be. Alright, there we go, I know I've got it. I apparently ended up with a chiseled version of endstone in the recipe somehow. I don't know how, but now we can start it up. And we can watch things start to populate into the ultimate crafting table. And there we go. And now we have an Endless Pearl in our inventory up here. 2 of them, both of the recipes, so good. Alright, and now we have the same thing set up for the Infinity Catalyst. This is all here. And now we're finally actually using the singularities. Although some of these singularities have relatively low numbers, the lowest one being the Fluxed Electrum. I don't think I need a ton of these. I might have overkilled on most of these, but I guess we're going to find out, aren't we? But now we just need to go into here, save the recipe, and it just dumped it into this crate, which we now need to connect up to this item conduit. And now we can make sure that this recipe also works. Because of course it also does not. Alright, I have no idea what's going on with package.io. I just resaved the recipes and now it works properly. So I guess let's kick this off and see how it goes. But this one's going to take a bit longer because we need quite a few materials still to be made for this one. So let's check back in a couple minutes. All right, and while we're waiting, here you go, John, since you're the one that brought it up. I now have the large iron plates automatically being produced via Tinker's IO. I filled up a drum full of molten iron via the Creative Tank and dumping it straight into the Tinker's IO's smart output. I've got a couple slot upgrades in here just to make sure that it doesn't fill up while it's going. This is why I wasn't using it for my Singularity farm though, because while it's a decent speed, this is as fast as it goes. This is a free solution. I could have obviously spammed out a bunch of these, but I figured this is just probably good enough right here. But I don't need a humongous number of these places, I just need thousands, so not tens of thousands. So thanks for poking my brain, John, I appreciate it. Well, I found a problem with this recipe and I'm not sure what to do about it. Because the automation interface is stuck with a music disc, and this is not the music disc I put in the recipe, which is why it doesn't know where to put it. I think I just need to remove all of the other discs from my A2 system, and hopefully that will work. Alright, and it looks like the Infinity catalysts are working properly now. The main thing I had to do was change the recipe so that it takes the correct music disc, and I removed all the rest from the A2 system and put them in a crate just so that there were no confusions, and the last two came out just fine without me touching it. Now, let's move on to the next ingredient, which is the ultimate singularity, and this one's easy. It's just one of each singularity. So I've got that populated. I just need to properly set up the automation interface and put in a packager and an unpackager for it. All right, and this one was pretty straightforward and it's all populating correctly already, and we should be good to go for this step, which leaves one final step for today. This should be the last one of these ever that I have to set up, at least for this pack, because we're pretty much done, because the last component is the Infinity Ingot, which this is expensive, man, let me tell you. But let's do the same thing where we save the recipe, realize that I have no box to output this to, figure out what I need to do there, and then test it out. Of course, I'm short on dragon's breaths. Time to go kill some ender dragons. Well, it turns out that we can't actually test out the ingot because it turns out I am short on some of the singularities, the diamond one and the flux crystal. I'm also short on blank slates right now, but this at least I can constantly make. So I guess we're going to have to let all this continue to run for a while and get our materials made. But thankfully we have a few other things left to do before we finish out this pack anyhow, so I shouldn't have to leave this running for too long unattended, which has been my whole goal from the start, is to not have a day where I just have to let this run for like 3 days straight or something. So, but we're pretty close. Anyhow, if you found this episode interesting and entertaining, please consider leaving a like or subscribing if you're new. As always, I'm Ard. Thank you for watching and have a nice day.